cup of coffee, looking at the weather and wondering if it's ever going to get below 90 degrees here. And all of a sudden you see one of your employers walking up. They're all wrinkled, they look like they hadn't slept, and you're like, wow, I should have been to work at 8 o'clock. And all of a sudden they look up and they look kind of startled, and they look at you, and as they're walking by, they go, oh, hi, boss. And as they say that, you smell a hint of alcohol. Ooh. So, here we go. You're all managers. What do? What's going to be our decision? What's that? Take him to the office. Or better yet, what? Was it Vince McMahon on WWF usually says, right, sir? You're fired! Right? That's what you want to do, right? You're drunk, you're getting out of here, you're fired. Oh, really? Let's talk about the first thing, is the decision-making context. Can you make that decision? Can you fire them? How about this? You are now husband and wife. You want to go buy a vehicle. You just drove home and said, honey, I'm home. Look at our new vehicle. And she looks at you and goes, how did you get the vehicle? What papers did you sign? Do I have to wait to sign the papers? Because I believe so, because I'm your wife. Do you really have the context to make those decisions before you do them? Can you fire somebody? Can you go through this? See, there is a context or an environment that helps you. Maybe there's a policy. Maybe there's a rule that governs the way and the manner in the way you make that decision. Just like even in personal stuff here. Yeah, he came home, he's got the vehicle, but he needs his wife to go ahead and sign on what? The lender's forms too. Bad decision, right? He didn't have the whole context to be able to make that decision. You need to think about that, ladies and gentlemen. If you make a decision, can you make that decision? Are you in full authority to be able to make that? Or some rules or policies that help you govern your decision? The next one is being able to identify values. Okay? Can we actually put a value on any type of decision? Because sometimes, let's put it this way. Maybe you want to build a house. Contractor A, contractor B, contractor C. They all give you a quote, right? And it's all typical, right? What do? We usually select what? The lowest bidder. Right? Because why? It's the lowest value. And is that what we should always take? Okay? A lot of times, hate to throw this out in business terms, does anybody know this acronym? And if you take in business classes, you should. Do you understand what RIO is? It's return on investment. Is that you can assess a value to something. And on work, it's very easy to do that. Let me ask you something. Could you put a return on investment on a relationship? Let's say that these two were getting married right here. You don't think that he could sit here and take a look at her and say, you know what, I hold a high value to the return on investment if I marry her. Because, number one, she's getting her education, and that's going to pay off because she's going to get a higher job. Okay? She has these talents. Also, too, is I know that she knows she's able to do this. She's got certifications. You can actually sit there and assess values to simply something like relationships. All right? And again, too, is that when you're making decisions, there's always going to be some type of value there. Okay? Whether it be factual, that you can hold on to it and have a lot of money, or you start taking a look at what we call intangibles and actually being able to assess values to them. Another one is simply this. You've got to understand something, ladies and gentlemen. There's always going to be a percentage of uncertainty. You're going to have to work in it. The bottom line is that this is a lot of times when you make decisions, here is your area of uncertainty. And you're about ready to make a decision. The bottom line is you need to take that uncertainty that you have, the unknown, the ambiguous, the vagueness, and you need to break that down and bring it in as close to almost zero as possible. You need to get it to where you have a working amount of uncertainty that you feel assured that when you make a decision that you can be rest assured that I can deal with that uncertainty. If you don't, you simply throw things out there into the wind and shoot from the hip and throw things up against the wall and hope they stick. You're simply working with a large amount of uncertainty, and that's where we start getting ourselves into problems. Another one is simply this, is that we have to work with negotiations. We have to work with trade-offs. Okay? So, you come home with a brand new F-250, loving wife looks at you and goes, oh, so you bought that home, huh? Okay, well, I'll tell you what. You can have that truck. Here we go. Ready? Here's where the trade-off and negotiations go. If, but, however, you go get a second job. We take a look at our budget and you do this. Or you trade in your other truck, you trade in your boat, you trade in this, and then you can go out and buy that truck. As well as I get my BMW before you get that truck. So, what are we doing here? Trade-offs and negotiations. It works the same in business. Here, let's do this. We have these two gentlemen right here. And this gentleman works for HR, this one works for a different department. And this different department that he is building, he's trying to come up with a plan. He says, hey, what's your name, sir?
Fabian.
Fabian. Hey, Fabian, dude, I want to do this. I have this objective. I have this plan. What do you think of it? Would you be able to support me? And Fabian looks at it and says, you know what? I don't see any problem with that. I don't got no heartache. However, if I go in and I support you with this, this is what I'd like to have in return. We do it every day, ladies and gentlemen. We negotiate. We trade. Okay? There's a book. Anybody hear of this book? It's talked about you can negotiate anything. It's written by a gentleman by the name of Herb Cohen. It goes all the way back to the 80s. It's a very excellent book. But bottom line, you can just about negotiate anything, is what he's trying to tell you. So, when we're doing decisions, there's always some type of trade-off or there's some type of negotiation that's going on. Now, in your handout, it talks about a basic decision-making process. I don't want to get too much into this because this is not about decision-making. This is about using critical thinking to make good decisions. And I'm here to tell you that you're going to need critical thinking for the very first one, meaning specify the problem. Here we go. All right, what's the problem with this scenario? Guy walks up, 9 o'clock, he's late, and it seems like there's alcohol in his breath. And you want to fire him, correct? Yes? Is that the problem? The problem is that he's drunk? Is that the problem? Talk to me, guys.
Assumptions.
What's that?
It could be assumptions.
It could be assumptions. Well, let's put it this way. You fire him. You fire him. And the next morning as you're walking into work, there's that greasy $3,000, $3,000 a month lawyer sitting there with his alligator skin briefcase with that slick grin on his face saying, I got you for wrongful termination. Because I'll put it to you this way. How many medicines and even syrups actually give off an alcoholic scent? Did you really know that he drank alcohol? All right? But that's not the problem. That's a symptom. And he could have. He could have gone out and he could have gotten drunk. But is that really the problem? Think of decision-making and looking at the problem as this. It is simply the dartboard. And you can't sit there and throw and kind of go around the center. You need to hit exactly what the problem is. Maybe the problem is this. How about this? Is that his inability to conform or go along the guidelines of the college when it comes to performance in daily activities. Could that be the problem? Right? So we're not looking at symptoms. The symptoms of alcohol, that's a symptom. Okay? His really problem is his inability to adhere to TSTC policies, which means is you don't come in here under the influence of alcohol or drugs. See, that's the problem, not the symptom. So you have to be very, very careful when you're sitting there and you're working with decisions. You need to really target what the problem is. If not, and you hit the symptom, guess what? You start to skew up like this, and every decision that you made was based off the symptom, not the problem. Now, when it comes to the different alternatives, this is where you sit there and you pick different alternatives and you allow critical thinking to take a look at every alternative. You take a look at what are the pros, what are the cons, what are the values. If I go with this, what are going to be the likely consequences and implications? You use the elements of thoughts to break everything down, break your thinking down, and those alternatives so you can make a good informed decision and say,